Hi, everyone. Welcome to Get in the Groove, a mini webinar series that the Slidesgo educator community is hosting for us, by us, for us, all August long, Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific and 12 noon Eastern. Today's is titled 5 Techniques That Educators Should Steal from Designers. Steal like an artist. Stealing is kind of just like borrowing in this case. I am so happy to be here with Claudia Corrales Garrido, who actually, Claudia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you for the quick intro. My name is Claudia, and I am an art director at Slidesgo, and I will be delivering today's webinar. You may be wondering what an art director does. So what I do basically is complete the briefings and set the tone for presentations and guide designers into the process of creating the presentations that are accessible and successful for every student in the class. So shall we get started?
Yes, thank you, Claudia. Before we dive all the way in, I want to share just two pieces. I guess housekeeping is the very jargony term for how to use the particular webinar technology that we have today. We have both polls. This entire presentation is super interactive. Thank you, Claudia, and thank you, Carmen, who's also on this call, a co-author of this presentation. So as we're going along, there will be poll questions to jog our thoughts about what it is that we're learning today. And also, should there be any questions, at the bottom right of your screen, there is a triangle, square, circle. It's called activities. That's what you'll open up to ask any questions for the next 20 minutes or so. My name is Elisa. I'm community manager with Slidesgo, your moderator for today. I am currently in my anniversary month of 10 years in the ed tech sector. And I decided to join Slidesgo because I'm so excited about the practical, helpful ways that Slidesgo helps teachers be storytellers, helps teachers bring their lessons very much to life. And we're gonna learn more about that today.
Awesome. Shall we?
Shall we? We shall.
So before we get started, I just want to mention that we have basically 3 sections on this presentation. We'll start with a warm-up sort of exercise where you will get some polls, so you can vote for the right answer. Then we'll dive into the 5 techniques you should steal from designers, and at the end we will wrap it up with the questions. So I'm just gonna be asking you a question, showing you a slide, and then you will be answering, choosing the right question for you. So how would you describe the following slide?
Poll launched.
Awesome.
Three, 2, 1. Oh no, I ended the poll early.
Oh no. Well, the right answer is that it is very chaotic. We don't know. There are many things happening here. The colors are too bright, and it might be hard for the student to focus on the content because of the organic shapes, the colors, and the boxes. So it is very chaotic. Let's go into the next one. What do you think of the color contrast on this slide? Let's go. What do you think? Pay special attention to subtitles, to the background color versus the text color. Right. Awesome. So yeah, you're correct. You chose the correct answer. It is not a great color contrast. People may not be able to differentiate the words with the background, especially on subtitles where you have the green background color and the gray on top, the contrast is not enough for people to read, especially if you're sitting at the back of a classroom. You may get like a blurry view of our subtitles. This also happens on the body text because the gray and the cream of the background is not different enough. Let's go on to the next one. What do you think of the information on the following slide? Let me show you the slide. Let's go. How do you feel about the fonts? Is it easy or is it hard to read? Think again about the students sitting at the back of the classroom. Do you think they may be able to read it, or is it going to be hard? So the correct answer is that it perhaps is not very understandable, especially for everyone at the class. If you pay special attention to subtitles and titles, the font is very irregular, and the body text with the handwritten font perhaps is not easy to identify. So again, that student at the back of the classroom may not be able to read these easily. Let's go on to the next one. Do you understand the order of these elements on this slide? How do we feel about it? Yeah. How do we feel about it? Is it attractive? Is it easy to read? Do we know what to read first or second? Are we ready?
Yes.
Yeah. So the correct answer here is that it is very hard to start reading this slide because of the hierarchy and the order of elements. Remember that we read left to right, top to bottom. So perhaps the number of the section should be the first thing that we see, and then the title, which would be introduction, should be the second one. But since it is vertically, we don't read it as a word, but more of as a visual element. So I would try to avoid every time you can the vertical texts, just because they are harder to read and to interpret. Let's go on to the next one. Do you think the color palette is relevant to the topic? Let me show you the slide and pay special attention to the title of the presentation.
National Book Lovers Day activities for class.
Yeah. Think about the color palette. Is it working? Is it helping us or not to tell what the presentation is about? Do you think it's correct? It's relevant? Is it relevant? Exactly. It's fun. It's definitely fun. The color palette is very fun, but perhaps it does not help us know what the topic of the presentation is. Perhaps this color palette is more suitable for a summer or fun or happy presentation, but not about Book Lovers Day.
Not necessarily, yeah.
Would you choose this aesthetic for a scientific poster? Yeah.
Yeah, this one I have to say out loud, there's a lot.
There's a lot going on. Yeah, definitely. So that's what we were trying to get to. When you have pieces of design so full of information that is perhaps very dense and heavy, it's better to get rid of unnecessary ornaments that may distract the user. You can get rid even of icons or the shadows we have, or even the pictures. We can make it a lot cleaner so the user can actually focus on the text, right? Would you agree or disagree, Elisa?
a lot clear. If I had 10 minutes to sit with each of these, but if I'm hoping to grab somebody at a glance, yeah, I would pare it down.
Definitely. So on to the next one. What do you think about the readability of the texts on the following slide? Do you think the student we talked about at the beginning, at the back, that is at the back of the classroom, will be able to read these? Do you think there's enough color contrast? I mean, it's beautiful. The color palette is beautiful, but is it functional?
I was thinking more for like a bathroom color palette, but not. I didn't think
Maybe.
but for a presentation.
Yeah, exactly. The correct answer that it is not great, the contrast, because the tones of the text and the background are too similar, and people in the classroom may not be able to, or people sitting at the back or someone with visual impairments may not be able to see the content and interpret it correctly. And the last one is, can you read this all at once? This is the slide. How do we feel about it? Do you think it's easy to read? Is it difficult? Yeah, exactly. It's very hard to read this one. And there are two reasons why this one's hard. The first one is the font choice. You see how the letters are don't have enough space around them or even within each character? That's called the counter space. You see, if you see the O particularly, you see the dot at the middle is very, very small. So that doesn't help us identify each character individually and then form words and read them. That makes it very, very hard. So that's why this font may not be great for a classroom environment. And then the second reason why this one is very hard to read is because of the background. It's a very complex and distracting background that does not help us understand the information, especially on the right side of the slide. So this was the first section of our presentation. I hope you had fun, at least, and learned a bit. And now that we are all warmed up, let's dive into the actual 5 techniques you should be stealing to fix all of these things we just saw. I'm going to go ahead and exit the full screen mode, if that's okay, because I'm going to be moving things around for you to see how we can be changing all of these aspects. Okay, so the first technique we're going to be talking about is going to be the resource selection. Resources are usually, we use them to help communicate our content or to decorate our slides and make them visually appealing, right? Between these two examples, you can clearly see that the one on the left has a lot of things happening, and it makes it hard for us to read the content, right? Whereas the one on the right is lighter in terms of decoration, and you can focus your attention directly on the text. So
can you share some example of resources? Do you mean like the background on Venus? Do you mean?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that question. We will see them on the next one. But what I mean by resources is the waves around, the organic shapes, the decorations and ornaments around in this one. It can also happen with images. If they're not relevant or if they are on top of text, they may harm the comprehension of the information if they're not relevant. We can later on, I have an example with images. We can go back to this comment and explain it a little bit more in a couple slides. So this is what I mean with resources. How can we fix these resources? This slide feels a bit heavy. What do you think? Wouldn't you say? So what we can do is simplify it. We can start by deleting some elements and making them smaller. So we have a more organized slide with less elements, more space for people to read and interpret the content. And these will help the student to focus their attention on the content. I have made a copy of this slide as we had it, which is very busy and there's a lot of things happening. And then here you see how the resources and the ornaments are around the information instead of behind it. Is it clear? Is it good? Yeah.
This is so great. It's like seeing a house renovation before and after. Thank you.
We will be seeing a lot of it moving forward. So the next point is color. Color is key to highlight information, but we need to make sure there's enough color contrast between background and text, especially for people to be able to read it. It does not mean you cannot have dark backgrounds, but it just means that the light font you put on top of it needs to be different enough so people can tell which character is which. So at the top, you see how it all gets kind of blurry and hard to read. And at the bottom, you have light on dark background and dark text on light background, and you can perfectly read it. So if our texts are not readable, what can we do? Well, first of all, we need to fix the contrast, right? See how we couldn't read the first paragraph and now we can clearly see it. The second point is to avoid bright colors, especially on texts, because it gets harder to read. It creates visual tension and distracts our student from the content. But it does not mean you cannot use bright colors here and there just to decorate your slide. So let's go ahead and change that to a darker, more neutral color. You can also use complementary colors, which means find two colors that work well together as well as with the background. And this is great to highlight special information, or for example, here we're using it for the subtitles to make them different from the title. But you need to make sure this second color you're adding has enough contrast with both the text and the background, the body text and the background. See how we had a different tone of purple and this one reads way better? Mm. And the last point again, and I'm sorry if it gets a little bit repetitive, but it's the person at the back. Makes sense. You need to be able to read it. Sometimes we forget, it looks amazing visually, but we forget that people are going to be seeing these from a distance. So it's great to increase contrast as much as we can. So here you can see the difference. This one reads way better. We can put all of the subtitles if you want in the darker tone, and it looks amazing and visually appealing as well. Whereas in this one, we're missing some information. And yep.
Oh, one last thing there. My understanding is that when using a Slidesgo template, complementary colors are already set in the custom colors.
Definitely. Let me show you quickly here. So this first section of your color palette is the presentation's actual color palette. Mm-hmm. There are the accents we use to color our presentations. So these that you see at the top are the 10 colors that we're using on the entire presentation. Some of them work well together because they're complementary. Some of them are just part of the color palette, but perhaps they're too similar, like the white and the light purple we are using in the background. So these would be an example of two colors that don't work. But if you use the other ones and they have enough contrast, you're good to go. So shall we go into the next one?
Absolutely.
So the third point is typography, which is perhaps my favorite one. Because typography has enormous power that not everyone takes advantage of. If you see these two examples, which one do you think is going to be easier to read at school, in the middle of the class, or in a classroom full of, I don't know, 20 students? The one on the right, perhaps, right?
Probably, yeah.
The one on the left is fun and it's attractive, but not readable enough, which means it's not accessible. So I'm going to give you five ways to choose the correct font. The first one is choosing a simple font, which means one where characters are easy to identify. See how we had a very ornamental one, and now we have this one, which is with a lot more simple. The next point is that typography has the power to evoke emotions, but we need to keep in mind that it still needs to be accessible. So this one is perhaps great for a Halloween presentation or a Halloween party invitation, right? You're gonna read it in a smaller format and not in class. And this one is perhaps more fun, but since it has a lot of contrast between characters, it will be hard to read in the middle of the classroom. So let's go ahead and change this to a more accessible font, which takes us to the third point, which is accessibility. Again, it's not only in terms of the font you choose, it also means size or color with the background, or even one little aspect that we tend to forget, that is the line spacing. See here how hard it is to tell where this line ends and where the next one starts, because there's not enough space between them. Let me change it for you so you can see what I'm talking about. See how this one has more space to breathe, so you have space so you can basically say, well, this line ends here, and guide the eye through the empty space onto the beginning of the next line. The next point is that you should be avoiding all caps in education presentations. And there is a very basic reason why. It is because we tend to read the top half of characters, of words. So since they all have the same height when they're all caps, it's very hard to identify each character and then understand the word. So if you change it to lowercase and just put the first letter in caps, it's going to be easier for the student. And last but not least is that you should be consistent with the style of your typography. All your titles should have the same characteristics, the same style, the same color, the same size. Well, your subtitles should follow the same style, and the body text as well. Let me just fix it for you. So we have all the subtitles in bold, and then all the body text, we can put it in semi-bold, which is better for us to read. And you can see here the difference between this slide and the one that we had before. This one is way more organized and easier to read, right? Yeah.
It's like at the ophthalmologist when they give you the choice between the two different prescriptions.
Exactly.
Give me the prescription.
Exactly.
Make it easier to read. Thank you.
No, thank you. This point goes directly linked to the last one, which is hierarchy. Hierarchy is key to guide our students' eye and to help them understand the information in a logical way. If we analyze the example on the left, I'm sure your eye goes basically to the purple text, to the explanation of the planet, but you don't read we're talking about planets in general first, and then a specific one, as it happens on the right one. You first see the planets big, the general topic, the idea that we're going to be talking about. Then we move on to the subtitle, which is Venus, and then we move on to the explanation and definition of that planet, which makes the structure of the slide way more logical for the student, right?
I struggle with that one. I struggle with this the most. So we learn about it in the next slide. This is really important.
Definitely. It's very important for students to understand the information the way you want them to receive it, and in the correct order you want them to receive it and understand it. So the main word here, or the key word, is contrast. Contrast helps us in terms of hierarchy a lot. We need contrast in color, for example. Here, we cannot see the number properly, but what if we add this little color? Well, we see the number. Color is very important. Size of the elements in general helps us create hierarchy. If you have bigger elements, the student's attention will go straight to those elements. And it happens as well in typography. Here, it's hard for you to tell what the subtitle is and the body text. But if you give it a little bit of contrast, like let's, for example, make them bigger, and let us make them darker so you can see them better. You start to see the information way better. And then the size of the body text is also important, but it should be always smaller than the titles and subtitles. And the last point to get a good hierarchy, to achieve a good hierarchy, is placement. So again, we need to order information in a way that our user get the idea, the general idea, and then go on to more detail. Just align these quickly, and then give them space and make them all bold. So here you can see how the hierarchy of the slide changed. Now you can see that there are 3 points that we're going to be talking about. Then you see the 3 subtitles, or the 3 points: size and color, typography, placement, and order. And then you see the definition of each. So that's the order we are establishing, and we're doing it through size, color, and typography. Contrast. So you can see the difference here between the two. And the last one is composition. And you may wonder, so if hierarchy is the order of elements, what is composition?
As in, I asked you that exact question.
That's why I'm using it as an example. So the main difference is that hierarchy establishes the logical order of elements, and a good composition has good hierarchy. But a composition is much more than the hierarchy. The composition is a combination of color, of typography, of the resources, of the icons we're using, of everything we just talked about. The composition is the whole, the entire layout, the entire piece of design, is the visually appealing piece that you're going to be showing your students. So when you have a composition that has a lot happening, like the one that we have on the left, it's hard, again, for students to get started. It might be overwhelming for them, whereas the one on the right is much more straightforward. So as you can tell, in all of these aspects, the order and arrangement of elements is key to help students digest information in a logical order that we want them to understand the information. And there are a few things you need to take into consideration while creating a great composition. And the first one is the alignment. As I explained at the beginning, you need to remember always that we read top to bottom, left to right. So if we align our content that way, we help directly students to understand our content.
In our language, in English and Spanish and many Western languages, top to bottom, left to right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that is key for us. Then we talk about balance. Balance is the way you distribute your elements in a slide, and you can do it in a symmetrical way or in an asymmetrical one. The symmetrical way is some sort of a butterfly sort of distribution. You get an axis, and then you equally divide your content in both sides. This one never fails, whereas the asymmetrical one is perhaps harder to achieve, but it basically means that you need to distribute the weight of the elements of the presentation equally, but adjusting it by using your eyes, basically. So what feels right, what feels if it's too heavy at the top of the presentation or the slide because of the amount of decoration, perhaps you need to reduce the amount of decoration there and add a bit of it at the bottom as well, so you have a more balanced slide composition. And then we have white space, which is perhaps one of the things designers use the most. You need to leave space for your content to breathe. You need to allow your student to identify each piece of information by itself and not overwhelm them with a lot of things in one slide. It's better to have more than one slide if you have a lot of content. So it's better for you to divide it and leave the content its own space, because it helps students not only read it and understand it, but it allows you to create to position elements next to each other that have a relationship. Have a relationship. I don't know if I'm explaining myself good enough.
Yeah, and make it clear what's important. What is the point I need you to know? And you can help achieve that by including space.
Exactly. White space is key. You may also hear of it as negative space. They're the same thing. You need space around your elements. And then within that space, you also need proximity. So you're going to be like, Claudia, but are you telling me we should have white space or proximity? Let me just explain it to you quite easily. Here, we have white space around our subtitles, right? But here we don't have enough white space between our texts, so you cannot tell which one goes with which subtitle, right? But what if I do this? What if I do this and add a bit of more space between these two paragraphs and reduce the space between our elements? So here you will see how each block of information has its own space, yet is related with their own subtitle. Is it clear? Oh, the line spacing here is a bit off. Okay, now we got it.
Now it's, yeah, super clean.
Right?
Ah.
Way more easy to read, right?
Going back to the old one is a little bit.
It hurts, right?
Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Definitely. Imagine me doing this. Okay, so those were our 5 techniques you should be stealing from us, designers. Let's just review them quite quickly. The first one is resources. They must add to the presentation, but never harm the way you are displaying your content. The second one is color. It helps us highlight information, but it should be readable. The content should be readable for everyone, right? Typography. Typography is key. It helps us evoke emotion, but you need to keep in mind that the fonts you choose need to be easy to recognize the letters, right? So people can read the letters and the words then. They need to be simple. And then hierarchy and composition, they are key to order information and deliver it to the students in a logical order. You need contrast in hierarchy, always contrast. And then in composition, Please use the negative space. Don't be afraid of having empty spaces on your slide. It allows students to breathe and not be overwhelmed with the content. So those are our 5 key points. And now that you've learned all of these things, we would absolutely love to see you put these in practice and design your own slide, introducing yourself to your 2023-2024 class using these 5 design principles. And then we would absolutely love it if you could share the outcome with us using the link here. We will be sharing this presentation, right?
Yeah, we'll share this recording will be on YouTube. If you're watching this, you're probably watching it on YouTube. And I will leave a link to the slides gallery in the bottom. Thank you so much, Claudia, for an incredible outline of those 5 really important and kind of secret. I felt like they were kind of secret up to this until you are shown them and shown how to apply them. And like I said, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So that was fantastic. I know that we are at the beginning of the school year for most semester and trimester schools, and a few educators, as in many educators, are going to be using slide decks and presentations to introduce yourselves. What Claudia suggested is that when you're creating your introduction to your class slides and presentation, and if you're using these 5 techniques, show us. Join the Slidesgo educator community. There will be a link to join there also. I would love to see what you create. We would love to see what you create. Claudia, Carmen both work on the team that actually makes these slides. So seeing how you use them and what you bring to life is, I don't know, like the jelly on our toast. It's or Nutella if you prefer. It's the icing on the cake for the job. Thank you so much for watching this presentation, for being with us. If you liked what you saw, please join us next Wednesday. Carmen and I will, I'm not doing much, I'm moderating, but Carmen will be sharing more about, we'll drop the title on Tuesday in the community. So we'll keep that a secret for now, but it'll be just as practical and just as applicable as what you got in today's presentation. I hope to see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.